We're now on Daf Gimel. Daf Gimel Amid Aleph. Yeser al Kain Kosav Legarish Ishto v'Nimlach. Ruvain wanted to divorce. Well, let's go back to Avram and Sarah. Avram wanted to divorce his wife Sarah, and then he changed his mind. Mitzol ben Ir, another local neighbor of this Avram, found Avram. The Amalon, he says to him, Shmi kishmecha, my name is also Avram. Shalom aleichem. Shem ishti kishem ishtcha, my wife's name is Sarah. Can I use the get that you initially had in mind and was written for you? Let me use it for me. And the Mishnah establishes pasul legarishbo. It's pasul. Why? Because it wasn't written lishma. Rava says, we see from here that in get, stoma is pasul. You need a positive kavanah lishma. And even though here, the sofer certainly had in mind l'shem krisus, but it's pasul because he had in mind the first Avram and the first Sarah. That's called shalol lishma. If he wouldn't have had in mind anyone, just l'shem gerushin, and maybe I'll find somebody with the name Avram who wants to divorce his wife Sarah, it would have been kosher. Because I'm sorry. Let me start again. The Gemara is assuming right now, we'll soon reject this, that when he has in mind for Avram and Sarah, the Sofer, he has in mind anyone with the name Avram or the name Sarah, and that's called stoma. Gemara says, no, Dilma Shiny Hasam, the Intik L'Shem Gershin Dahu. The Sofer did not have in mind for someone's gerushin who has the name Avram and her name is Sarah. No, he had in mind that specific Avram and that specific Sarah. So it could be that stoma, if he would have just prepared the get hoping that someone by the name of Avram and someone by the name of Sarah who wants to get divorced would come along, it would be kosher. So how does Rava prove from here that stoma is possible? Dilma Shani Hasam, right. Elamiha, we have to quote a different Mishnah. Yes, okay. Yeshlo shtei noshim. It's married to two wives. And shemoteim shavos. They're both Sarah. Again, this is a pretty embarrassing situation if he calls out Sarah and the wrong Sarah shows up. But anyway, he's married to two women with the same name. Kosav legarish boes ha gedola. He wanted to divorce the older of the two. Lo yegarish boes haktana. If he chooses and changes his mind, now he wants to divorce the younger of the two, and the get looks identical because it's the same name, it's possible. What do we see from this? That stoma is possible. The Gemara says, what are you talking about? Dilma shadi hasim de intik shem gerishanahu. The get was written for the older one. That's a shalol lishma for the younger one. But if the get would have been written with a stoma, with just, a general kavana with, he'll divorce one of these two saras, he'll decide which one, which is going to lead us to the sugya of Breira in a minute, then it would be kosher. So how, Rava, do you prove for this Mishnah that stoma is possible? This is not stoma. This was written for the Gedolah. Elamiha, from another Mishnah, yeser al kain. If a man was married to two women with the same name, v'amal lavla, and he says to the sofer, you know what, I can't stay married to two women. It's like too much for me. One is enough. So he tells the sofer, called a lavlar, ksov li eziv en she'ir tzagarish. Just prepare the get. I want to have the get in my drawer, and I'll decide which of these two wives of mine I will divorce. Possible legarishbo. He can't use it. So what do we see? The lavlar had in mind a stoma. He didn't have in mind Sarah the first or Sarah the second. He had in mind Sarah, stam, whichever one you decide to divorce. Why is it possible? Obviously, says Rava, you disqualify a get that was written stoma. Mar says Dilma shiny hasam the ein breira. We have to worry about a shita that holds ein breira. Ein breira means we cannot wait till later to clarify something that came earlier. And therefore, even though he decided later on that he wants to divorce this one, he made that choice and he made that decision. We don't say that that's going to reflect retroactively on the kavana that was in the mind of the lavla, because we're holding now ein brera. See, if you hold yesh brera, then now that the Baal decided that when I said to you yesterday, le'ezev shenjirtza, I meant this Sarah, the Gdola or the Ktana, and then we would say, Gloi milsum afrei through brera, that the get was written for that Gdola that he later on decided, and it works retroactively that he wants to divorce. So that would be kosher. But now we're holding ein brera. And if ein brera, then you cannot reflect retroactively and decide what his kavana, which wife he wants to divorce. And therefore the Gemara says that Rava has no proof from here that stama is possible. This is not considered stam. This is considered shalol lishma. Now, why is this considered shalol lishma? Because as far as the lavler is concerned, he didn't know which of the two wives Mr. Avram is going to decide to divorce. So he had in mind, so to speak, both of them. He had in mind the Ketana and the Gedola, just in case. So therefore, since he had in mind also the Ketana, and now the Baal decides he wants to divorce the Gedola, there's a machshava shalol lishma. Ela mihacha. Where is this? HaKosef Tosei Gittim. The Sofrim wanted to make sure that if there would be an influx of husbands coming into them to order Gittim, they would be prepared. So when they had free time, they would write the Tofes of the get. The Tofes of the get is the structure of the words of the get that's standard, that's common to every single get. That's called a Tofes. But wait a second. If the sofer is writing Tofsei Gittin, he's producing them mass-produced, like manufacturing them, like, bread coming out of the oven, so then there's no lishma. So the answer is there are certain parts of the lishma of the get that require lishma, the critical parts. Tzarich she'aniach, makom ha'ish, makom ha'isha, u'makom ha'edim, u'makom hazman. So basically, there are three critical elements in the get that require lishma. Number one, the names of the husband and the wife. Number two, the place from which the husband hails and the place from which the wife hails. And the Edom have to write lishma when they sign the get, and makom uzman. So it's actually 5 different things. Makom means the place where the gerushin is going to be implemented, and the zman means the day on which the get is given. The Omer of Yehuda Shmuel, he adds another thing. So that is also a toref, as opposed to a tofes, that requires lishma. So how does Rava prove from here that stama is possible? You see that the Mishnah is requiring a positive kavana l'shem ish l'shem isha. He can't just write a tofes and have in mind stama. Whoever comes forward and wants this get, I'll give it to them. But rather, the get has to be written l'shma, and he's got to write the names of him and her l'shma. Okay, fine. Now, we go back to Rava, and Ravina again is presenting a Chazor Shir, a review of Rava's Shir to Rav Papa, and Rava continues, and he has a second kasha. Su Rami Milsachriti, he has another kasha. Mi Omar Rabbi Yehuda Mara. Later on, the Gemara in Daf Mem Vav is going to quote Rabbi Yehuda the name of Rav that Chatos Sheshchato l'shem Ola Psula, but Shchato l'shem Chulin Kshera. Whoa. If the shochet, the Kohen, has in mind in this Ola, in this Chatas that he wants the Shechtel L'Shem Ola, and you recall that in our Mishnah we said that any Korban Chatas that Shechted for any other Zevach is possible. But if he had in mind L'Shem Chulin, oblivious to the fact that it's a Korban, Kshera. Why? The answer is that Chatas is called Lav Mina. What does that mean, Lav Mina? Like, let's say you would shecht for the purpose of a guy. A guy is Lav Mina. He's not a Jew. He's not included in the Chi of Karbanos and the Chi of Nedarim. A man can shecht for a dog. Or a get could be written for a cat. That's Lav Mina. That's totally from a different world. Apparently, Rav, says Rava, is making a statement that's predicated on an underlying principle that Lav Mina Lav Machriba. That if you have a kavanah that's coming from a different world, it doesn't register. And therefore, it doesn't undermine the kashrus of this shechita. Chulin is a different world. If you have in mind a chatas l'shem ola, that's called mina. That's all the same min, two karbanos. And therefore, machriva, it undermines the karban and it passes. But l'shem chulin is lav mina, lav machriva. Uriminu. Rava says, I'm going to quote a Mishnah in Gitna Daf Chav Dalvid that contradicts this. Kol I get sheniktav shalolu shem isha pasul afilu l'shem overes kochav nami pasul. I don't get it. The Sofer wrote the get for the purpose of a goyata. Goyata is lav mina, and therefore it should be lo machrivba. It should not be considered a machshava poseles. According to you, Rav, that lav mina, for example, if you had in mind the chatas l'shem chulin, it doesn't passel the carbon. Then if the sofer had in mind l'shem avodas kochavim, it shouldn't passel the get because avodas kochavim is lav mina. She doesn't belong to gerushin. She doesn't belong to ishus. And again, as Ravina told Rav Papa, you missed the great shia because Rava not only asked this theory, but he reconciled it. Veshani, and he answered, get dal over this kochav minei havile stamus no apostle. Don't ask a kasha an analogy from get because in get we established that stama is possible. So if the sofer had in mind l'shem Mrs. Shiksa, then okay, it's lav mina, but it's stama, and stama is possible. But kodshim dal chulin minayu havile stamu stomach sherim. But Rav is saying that in a case where the Kohen HaShochet had in mind l'shem chulin, chulin is lav mina, and therefore it doesn't register at all on the rector skill. It's nothing. It's like stoma, and stoma is kosher in zvach. Now Rav asks the third kasha. Okay, now for this kasha, we're going to have to know a little bit of taros, of what's called kalim, halachas of kalim. So maybe I'll just give a short introduction, a little background. There's something called a kli cheres that's made of earthenware. And the halacha is that kli cheres is metame bi'avir. That means if a sheretz, which is a source of tumah, is hanging suspended, let's say you have it on a string, inside the air space of a kli cheres, then everything inside the kli cheres is tameh. And that's a unique halacha in kli cheres. It's almost as if we view the inside of the kli cheres as if it's filled up. So therefore, any kalim that are inside the kli cheres become tameh when the sheretz is in the avir of the kli cheres. Mi Amar Rabbi Yehuda Amar Rav Chata sheshchata l'shem ola psula shchata l'shem chulin kshera alma demina machriv ba v'lav mina lav machriv ba v'asanya. What are we going to do with the following brisa? And we're talking about toch tocho. What is toch tocho? Toch tocho means you have a kli cheres, and inside the kli cheres you put another kli. And the question is the kli chotzes, so that anything that's inside the inner kli is protected, that's called hatzola, from the tuma of the larger kli of the kli cheres. So you have a sheretz inside the avir of the kli cheres, but inside the kli cheres you have another kli that shoots up above the airspace of the kli cheres. And what is the status of that which is in the tocho, the inner kli? Does that become tumah? Or do we say no? It will not acquire tumah because the walls, which are called the fanos, of the inner kli are chotzes. They separate between what's on the other side, meaning that's inside the kli cheres, and that which is inside the tocho. And therefore it says tocho v'lo tocho. Fine. So at this point, all we know is that the defanos of the inner kli are chotetzos, right? They stop the tuma from what's on the other side of the kli, of the walls of the kli, and that which is inside the inner kli. But then the brisa continues and says, "Afilu kli shetef matzil." What is the nature of the inner kli? Is it also a kli cheres? You have a larger kli cheres on the outside with a sheretz in its airspace, and you have an inner kli cheres on the inside, which is called tocho. In that case, it's called min b'mino, because it's one kli cheres with another kli cheres. But yet the brisa says afilu kli shetef. Kli shetef is made of wood or of metal. And a kli shetef, by the way, why does he use the word shetef? He tells you that a kli eitz or a kli mateches im nitmu yeshlem tara al yidei tvila b'mikvah. Right? There's no tara in kli cheres, but in other materials there is tara b'mikvah. So the word shetef means to put in water, which means here in this case to put it into a mikvah. So that's called kli shetef. And now we're saying that afilu kli shetef matzil. Now we just finished saying that min b'mino machriv. So I understand that a kli cheres that has defanos separates itself from that which is on the other side of the inner kli cheres, because min b'mino is machriv. But min b'she'eno mino, for example, a kli that's made out of eitz or mateches, which is not similar at all to a kli cheres, has its own dinim, that's eno machriv, meaning it doesn't register at all. It doesn't create a problem, and therefore those defanos should not be able to be matzil, meaning anything inside the inner kli that's a kli shetef should become tameh, and yet the Brisa says afilu kli shetef matzil. The Shani and Rava answered, "Asu chulin etzel kodshim kimechitza etzel tanu. Ma mechitza etzel tanu lo mahanya leklal, af chulin etzel kodshim lo mahanya leklal." Now, the Kohen, shechted a korban ol l'shem chatas. Comes along Rav and says that's not comparable to the case of a kli shetef inside a kli cheres, which would be, let's say, a tanur, an oven, would be a classic case of a kli cheres. So you have a kli shetef made of eitz or mateches, and you put it inside a tanur. And we're saying that even in a case of a kli shetef, it's called mino. And the defanos of the kli cheres will be matzil, will save that which, I'm sorry, the defanos of the kli shetef will be matzil, that which is inside the kli shetef. And why is that? Because the kli shetef is considered mino, and mino is machriv. And why is it mino? Because even though a kli shetef has different dinim than a kli cheres, but nevertheless, at the end of the day, it's a kli. A kli is a kli is a kli. And therefore, it's considered min echad, and it's chotzitz. But in chulin is not a min carbon at all. It's not like you have chatos and osham and ola and shlovim. No, those are different minim of kachin, of karbanos. So that's called min b'mino. But chulin is min b'sheno mino. Tisnan, and Rav wants to prove this did that the mechitza of the kli shetef is not is what? Is min b'mino, and therefore it's matzil. Because we have a Mishnah in Kalim that says Tanur shechotzitzo b'nesarim o b'yirios v'nimtze sheres b'mokom echad hakol tameh. So if you have an oven, and inside the oven he puts some sort of walls made of wood or different kinds of yirios, and that goes all the way up to the top, and nimtze sheretz makom echad, he finds the sheretz in one place in this tanur hakol tameh. So it means that even though there's a mechitza inside the tanur, and you have, let's say, ochel umashkin on the other side of the mechitza, then the mechitza is not matzila, and everything becomes tameh, because the mechitza is eino mino, and eino mino, eino mach. It can't be matzil. It can't stop the tumor from spreading. Lav mino lo mach. And kaveres, which is a kli made of reeds, which reminds us of a honeycomb. Shehi pchusa upkuka bekash. It's full of holes. Once it's full of holes, even though he was sosing those holes with kash, nevertheless, it's no longer a kli. And it loses its shem kli. Umeshuleshes li'aver tanur, and he hangs it inside the airspace of the tanur with its mouth, again, as we said before, up on top of the opening of the oven. Sheretz b'tocha hatanur tamei, sheretz b'tanur ochlin sheb'tocha tmeim. Notice the kaveres is not a chatzitza. Why? Because since it's pchusa, it has holes in it, and it's batla mitoras kli, then it becomes a mechitza. And we said that a mechitza is not chotzitz, and the tumah continues despite the mechitza, because it's min b'sheno mino v'eno machim. Rabbi Eliezer disagrees, umitayr, and he says that the ochlin inside the kaveres, when the sheretz is in the tanur, or the ochlin that are inside the tanur when the sheretz is in the kaveretz, it's all tar. And it means that he holds that a mechitza is chotzitz, it's chotzetzes. And he explains why. Omer Rabbi Eliezer learns it from a kal v'chomer. Im hitzila b'meis hachomur lo tatzil b'kli cheres hakal. If a dead corpse, which generates the most chomer, the most severe tumah of all tumas, it's avi avos hatumah, and yet, if he enters into a house, and there's a corpse in the house, but there's a mechitza, a wall that separates him or the kalim from the dead body, then everything is tar. So you see that even in a tumah chamura, the most severe tumah like mess, nevertheless a mechitza is chotzetzes, is then in kli cheres, which is only a tumah sheretz, and that's relatively a tumah kala, then for sure, says Rabbi Eliezer, how much more so is a mechitza chotzetzes, and therefore all the kelim and all the ochun umashkim that are on the other side of the mechitza in either direction are tahorim. Amru lo, and the chachamim turned to Rabbi Eliezer and they said, "Lo, we have a pircha on your kal v'chomer."